Imagine trying to race a modern, highly engineered Formula One car on this winding, vintage dirt track built back in the 1920s.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Right. I mean, you have all this raw, unbridled horsepower at your disposal, but the environment beneath your tires was designed for, well, a completely different era of physics entirely.
A total mismatch.
Exactly. And that is the exact biomechanical mismatch happening right now in the Philadelphia suburbs. Welcome to the deep dive.
I'm glad to be here for this one.
So for everyone listening, it is Saturday, May 16th, 2026. Round 3 of the 108th PGA Championship at Aronimink Golf Club just wrapped up, and we are staring down a historic level of chaos.
Chaos is honestly the best word for it.
It really is. I mean, there is this massive logjam of 21 players sitting within 4 shots of the lead.
21 players.
Yeah. Xander Schauffele called it an absolute free-for-all, which honestly might be the understatement of the year.
I mean, when you look at the raw probability of a 21-player bottleneck at a major championship after 54 holes, the math almost breaks.
It just doesn't happen.
Right. You normally expect a clear narrative by Saturday evening, 2 or maybe 3 heavyweights separating themselves from the pack.
Yeah, establishing dominance.
Exactly. So to see a fifth of the entire field still mathematically viable for the Wanamaker Trophy, well, it means the environment itself is actively suppressing the top tier of talent.
Well, like simultaneously keeping all the underdogs alive.
Precisely.
So our mission today is to figure out exactly why Aronimink is producing this absolute rush hour traffic jam on the leaderboard. We've pulled together a massive stack of sources for you.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot of data today.
We really do. We have course architecture reviews, detailed weather forecasts, live player press conferences, and betting profiles. We are going to build out the complete picture of this battlefield and really set the stage for what promises to be an epic Sunday showdown. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to understand the congestion on that leaderboard, you really have to look at the identity crisis of the golf course itself.
Aronimink's a fascinating place.
It is. I mean, it's a 1928 Donald Ross masterpiece,
Sure.
right? And it was extensively restored in 2016 by the architect Gil Hanse.
Right, the 2016 restoration.
Yeah, and it's a par 70, playing at a maximum of about 7,400 yards. Now, I know to the average weekend golfer, 7,400 yards sounds like a complete marathon.
Oh, I'd be exhausted just walking it.
Exactly.
Huh.
But to a modern tour pro armed with, optimized launch conditions, that yardage is essentially a playground.
It's nothing to them.
Right. And that's partly because there are only 2 par 5s on the entire property, and, well, partly because of the great tree debate.
Yes. The sources highlight this massive architectural controversy because over the years, Aronimink lost a huge portion of its trees to red oak wilt, which is it's this fungal disease that can devastate an entire forest canopy in just a few seasons.
It's really tragic from a landscaping perspective.
It is. And then, during that 2016 restoration, even more trees were intentionally removed to peel the course back to Donald Ross's original 1920s vision.
To open it up.
Yeah, it opened up the sightlines beautifully, but it triggered some serious complaints from the players this week. I mean, Rory McIlroy came out and flat out criticized the setup.
He didn't hold back at all.
Not at all. He said, and I quote, "Strategy off the tee is pretty non-existent. It's basically bash driver down there and then figure it out."
Which is fascinating because Rory is echoing a very traditional mindset about course defense there.
The old school way of thinking.
Right. The old school philosophy is that spatial defenses, like a 100-foot oak tree guarding the corner of a dogleg, force a player to shape the ball or club down.
To think about their tee shot.
Exactly. And Xander Schauffele chimed in the very similar sentiment, basically suggesting they should just put a bunch of trees back on the course to penalize wayward drives and, force guys to chip out sideways.
Honestly, I have to push back on Schauffele's logic there. I mean, is relying on a giant piece of wood blocking your path just a cheap gimmick in modern golf?
That's the big question.
Right, because we are talking about athletes who use ground reaction forces and, advanced biomechanics to generate 190-mile-per-hour ball speeds.
It's an entirely different game now.
Exactly. If a player launches a drive 150 feet into the air, a tree planted in 1930 isn't going to interact with the flight path anyway. Shouldn't a major championship course have a more sophisticated defense system than just, growing a tall obstacle?
Well, John Rahm completely dismantled Schauffele's argument in his press conference by pointing out that exact reality.
Rahm always tells it like it is.
He really does. And he offered a highly nuanced take on the agronomy and the physics of the modern game. He noted that with current ball technology and just the sheer velocity these guys produce, the longest players are going to overpower the fairways regardless of whether there are trees lining them.
The trees are basically irrelevant to the bombers.
Right. But more importantly, Rahm highlighted the environmental reality, which is that removing those trees actually dramatically improves the overall health of the golf course.
Because the turf actually gets to breathe, right?
Yeah. What's fascinating here is that the science of agronomy dictates you need wind flow and unimpeded sunlight to create championship-level firmness.
You can't have shadows covering the grass all day.
Exactly. When you surround a fairway with dense trees, you trap moisture. You create the soft, spongy ground. By clearing out the canopy, Aronimink's turf is tighter, healthier, and incredibly firm.
Which changes everything.
It does. The defense mechanisms expected in the 1930s simply do not apply to the 2020s. So if the fairways can't protect Aronimink, the course has to fight back somewhere else.
And looking at the data, it is fighting back viciously the second the players step onto the putting surfaces.
Oh, viciously is the right word.
The greens are the sole true defense of this golf course, and they are doing a spectacular job of leveling the playing field.
They are gargantuan by modern standards. I mean, they're averaging a massive 8,200 square feet per green.
That's huge.
It is. And they are heavily contoured with these severe, sweeping Donald Ross slopes.
Just listen to the statistics from our sources, because they are staggering. On Thursday alone, there were 127 three-putts.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
Right. To put that in perspective for you, the entire Masters tournament last month, across all 4 days, only saw 193 putts total.
Thursday alone had almost as many as the whole Masters.
Yeah. And the make rate from 4 to 8 feet at Aronimink right now is sitting at just 65.39%.
Which makes it one of the toughest tests on tour this entire year.
The math changes completely when you reach those surfaces. And the underlying mechanism driving that difficulty goes right back to what Ron was talking about, right? The firmness of the turf.
Exactly. Scotty Scheffler gave a brilliant mechanical explanation of this in his presser. He noted that if a course is soft, players can easily fall back on a bomb and gouge style.
Just hit it as far as you can and deal with the rough later.
Right. You can hit a drive a mile offline, let it land in the deep rough, and because the green is soft and receptive, you just wedge it out high and the ball stops dead on the putting surface.
So the penalty for missing the fairway is neutralized by the softness of the target.
Yes. But when you have the wind and sunlight drying out those greens, the physics of the approach shot turn against you.
How so?
Well, think of backspin on a golf ball, like the brakes on your car. When you hit a shot out of the fairway, you get clean contact, pure friction, between the club face and the ball.
Which engages those brakes.
Right. But when you hit out of the rough, grass gets caught between the club and the ball. It's like your brake pads are suddenly coated in oil.
Oh, wow. That's a great analogy.
The friction drops to near zero, and the ball comes out with a fraction of its normal backspin.
So it's coming in hot.
Exactly. And if that low-spin ball hits a baked, firm green with severe slopes, it behaves like a marble dropping onto a concrete driveway. It takes one hard bounce, catches the slope, and just rolls clean off the other side.
So controlling your distance out of the rough becomes a mathematical impossibility.
It really does.
And that brings up a really revealing quote from Keegan Bradley. He said the PGA Championship has no agenda.
Yeah, that was an interesting comment.
He contrasted it with the U.S. Open, claiming the U.S. Open actively tries to make their courses ridiculously hard to the point of being unfair, whereas the PGA just wants to host a great tournament.
Bradley is highlighting a very specific philosophical divide in how the major championships are run.
Right.
The U.S. Open often uses deep, rough, and narrow fairways to enforce a specific style of play, essentially dictating how the players must navigate the course.
So what does this all mean? If the PGA truly has no agenda, why are the players calling these pin locations absurd and diabolical?
Well,
I mean, are the tournament organizers secretly looking at all these guys bombing it off the tee and deciding to protect the course's pride by putting the holes on the edges of severe slopes?
honestly, the strategy behind the pin placements isn't about protecting the course's pride, and it's certainly not malicious.
Yeah.
Kerry Hay is the Chief Championships Officer for the PGA, and his entire philosophy is rooted in showmanship. He doesn't want the players to suffer. He wants them to be tested mentally.
Tested mentally.
Right. By placing these pins on the crowns of hills and down in the valleys of these massive 8,200 square foot greens, Hay is demanding a supreme level of lag putting.
Okay, we should define that for a second. Lag putting is when you are facing a massive 30 or 40-foot putt over multiple slopes, and your primary goal isn't actually to make the putt.
Right, you're not trying to sink it.
Your goal is simply to lag the ball close enough to the hole so that you don't face a terrifying second putt.
Exactly. It forces a player to accept that sometimes a 30-foot par putt is the absolute best possible outcome on a hole.
Because attacking the pin directly with an approach shot might send the ball cascading off a false front.
Precisely. What Kerry Hay is doing with these pin placements is intentionally engineering a traffic jam.
He knew this would happen.
He knows that by neutralizing the advantage of driving distance and placing the premium entirely on lag putting and discipline, the scores will inevitably cluster together. He is creating maximum drama for the fans.
And if Hay deliberately used these greens to engineer a traffic jam, it worked flawlessly. But that strategy completely levels the playing field, leaving us with a leaderboard where untested rookies are standing shoulder to shoulder with world number ones.
The dynamic at the top of the board defies all conventional tournament logic right now.
Let's look at the actual characters who have survived 54 holes of this architectural obstacle course, because the mix of established titans and absolute wildcards is fascinating.
It really is.
The guy leading the pack, sitting at 6 under par, is Alex Smalley. He is an unheralded 29-year-old with exactly 0 PGA Tour wins on his resume.
0 wins.
And the irony of his current position is almost too good for a scriptwriter. When Smalley was a student at Duke University, he actually lived in a dorm called the Wanamaker Quad.
You can't make that up.
Right. Now he is quite literally playing for the Wanamaker Trophy.
The narrative symmetry is incredible, but you also have to look at his underlying support system, which is radically different from the titans chasing him.
Right, because while guys like Scheffler and McIlroy are surrounded by teams of swing coaches analyzing TrackMan data and biomechanists tweaking their launch angles, Smalley has this incredibly relatable dynamic.
It's very unique.
His mom acts as his momager. She literally walks outside the gallery ropes, recording his golf swings on her iPhone to send back to his coach.
It sounds quaint, but psychologically, that might be his greatest weapon right now.
Wait, really? How so?
It grounds him in his standard routine. The immense gravity of a major championship can easily crush an inexperienced player. But having his mother filming on a phone replicates the exact environment he's experienced since junior golf.
That makes a lot of sense.
It reduces his cognitive load. And let's not forget his pedigree. He holds Duke's all-time scoring record. And in the 2018 NCAA championships, he actually beat Scottie Scheffler.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he knows he can go toe-to-toe with the best.
He has the proof.
But right behind him is an absolute murderer's row of major champions. You have Jon Rahm at 4 under par.
Rahm is always dangerous.
And Rahm has spent the entire week dealing with relentless press conference questions about Livy Golf's funding being pulled.
A huge distraction.
Yet he is impartially blocking out all of that global sports business noise to focus purely on his game. We are just reporting on the source material here, not taking sides, but it's undeniable that he's under immense external pressure.
Absolutely.
And his only real lapse in concentration was a limp out on the 18th hole for his first 3-putt of the entire week.
Managing external noise is a distinct skill set for elite athletes. Rahm's ability to compartmentalize geopolitical sports drama and execute on a severe Donald Ross green is a testament to veteran focus.
Then you have Rory McIlroy sitting at 3 under, chasing his 3rd Wanamaker. Put yourself in Rory's shoes for a second. You were tied for 104th place after round 1.
An incredible comeback.
If he pulls this off, he will break a 30-year-old record for the worst 18-hole position by an eventual major winner.
That would be historic.
And lurking at 1 under is the world number 1, Scottie Scheffler. He's in the mix despite struggling heavily with his putter, missing 5 putts inside of 8 feet on Saturday alone.
And that 4 to 8 foot range is exactly where those sloping greens inflict their deepest psychological damage.
It's just brutal.
It is. When you miss 5 putts from that distance, the hole starts to look like a thimble.
So, looking at the psychological breakdown, when you have a field packed with these seasoned, battle-tested major winners, does an underdog like Alex Smalley actually have an advantage?
It's a great question.
Because in a 21-player tie, there is this fascinating game theory at play. If you are trailing by 1 stroke in a normal tournament with only 3 guys in contention, you can play aggressive match play golf. You watch what your opponent does and you react.
Right. It's straightforward.
But when 20 guys can win, pressing too early seems fatal. Does not knowing what it's like to blow a major on Sunday help an unburdened rookie?
It is the ultimate test of the unburdened mind versus the calloused veteran. In a vacuum, ignorance of the pressure can allow for a state of flow.
Just playing golf.
Exactly. Smalley's stated strategy is to treat this like any other golf tournament. If he can genuinely maintain that illusion, he avoids the paralysis of overanalysis.
But maintaining that illusion requires actively ignoring the reality of the leaderboard.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
The illusion always cracks when you make the turn on the back nine on Sunday.
Historically, yes. For veterans like McIlroy or Rahm, Sunday isn't an illusion they have to prop up. They know exactly how suffocating the pressure feels, and they have built the mental infrastructure to process it.
They've been there.
Right. In a 21-player free-for-all, game theory dictates that chaos will force unforced errors. Players will look at the massive leaderboard, panic that someone is going to shoot a low number, and they will take on unnecessary risk.
And that's when things fall apart.
The callous experience of the veteran usually wins out because they have the discipline to let the rest of the field make mistakes.
And the physical environment is about to make those mistakes incredibly costly. Let's look ahead to the ultimate test. Sunday's conditions.
This is where it gets really grueling.
Because the weather forecast is going to turn Aronimink into an absolute furnace, and it completely alters the mechanics of play we just discussed.
The meteorological data here is the final, crucial variable that will break this logjam.
According to the AccuWeather forecast from our sources, Sunday is bringing a rare May heat wave to Pennsylvania.
Unseasonably hot.
We are looking at highs in the low 90s, a brutally high UV index, and baking relentless sun. Even Alex Smalley noted it in his presser. He said, it's going to be hot, it's going to be sunny, and there's not going to be a whole lot of moisture on the golf course.
Which means the agronomy of the course reaches its breaking point. As that moisture evaporates from the soil, the turf loses its elasticity.
So it gets even harder.
The friction we talked about earlier drops even further, and the greens transition from firm to essentially concrete.
Wow. And with only 2 par 5s on the property. The statistical key to winning this tournament is par 4 scoring. There are 12 par 4s out there.
That's where the tournament will be decided.
The winner is going to be the player who can execute long irons and wedge approaches into these concrete surfaces. As that moisture leaves the soil, does this stop being a golf tournament and turn into a sheer survival test?
In many ways, yes.
Does the advantage shift away from the aggressive birdie hunter entirely over to the most patient lag putter?
Sunday at a major championship under these conditions is a pure war of attrition. The baking heat doesn't just exhaust the physical body, it drains the nervous system.
The mental fatigue has to be immense.
Oh, definitely.
Oh.
Decision fatigue begins to set in around the 12th or 13th hole. Every single approach shot requires high-level mathematical calculations regarding trajectory, bounce, and roll.
Because every decision carries severe risk asymmetry.
Exactly. Those 4 to 8 foot putts we mentioned. By 4:00 p.m. on Sunday, the greens will be so baked out that a 5-foot putt downhill will feel terrifying.
I'd be shaking over a 5-footer in those conditions.
Anyone would. It severely punishes anyone who misses their approach shot on the wrong side of the hole. An aggressive player who fires directly at a tucked pin and misses by 2 yards might be looking at a chip shot that is mathematically impossible to stop within 10 feet of the cup.
And then they're looking at a huge number on the scorecard.
The cognitive load of constantly calculating disaster wears a player down. Patience and the discipline to aim for the fat, safe center of the green becomes the only viable strategy.
It's almost like the course is setting traps, just waiting for the decision fatigue to make someone greedy.
That's a great way to put it.
In a 21-player bottleneck, someone will inevitably get impatient, fire out a pin, and drop 3 shots. The winner is going to be the guy who just quietly hits the center of the green and 2-putts his way to the clubhouse.
The architecture of Aronimink, combined with the blistering heat, creates a scenario where the ultimate victor will likely be the one who makes the fewest catastrophic miscalculations rather than the one who hits the most spectacular shots.
It is setting up to be a truly unbelievable finish. So, to recap the incredible stakes we are looking at, you have a historic 21-player traffic jam fueled by an impossibly tricky set of 8,200 square foot Donald Ross greens.
Greens that are only getting firmer.
Right. Those greens are rejecting approach shots, neutralizing modern driving distances, and causing 3 putts at a staggering rate. You have a baking Sunday forecast that is going to sap the moisture from the soil and turn the course into a trampoline, testing the nervous systems of every player out there.
It's going to be grueling.
And right in the middle of it all, you have a true underdog in Alex Smalley, relying on his mom's iPhone videos to reduce his cognitive load, trying to hold off the absolute titans of the sport who have the calloused mental armor to survive.
It is a profound demonstration of how environmental factors dictate human performance.
It really is.
The variables of heat, turf firmness, and architectural deception are combining to strip away the advantages of raw athletic power, forcing these players to rely almost entirely on their psychological endurance and spatial discipline.
Which leaves us with one final, provocative thing to ponder. We talked earlier about how modern technology, the optimized biomechanics, the titanium club heads, the aerodynamic golf balls, has allowed today's players to easily overpower century-old fairways.
They hit it miles past the old trouble spots.
They really do. They just launch the ball right over the top of the old tree lines and spatial defenses like Formula One cars on a dirt track.
Yeah.
But considering just how much these world-class athletes are struggling on Aronimink's severe sloping putting surfaces, it really makes you wonder about the future of course design.
It's a big debate in the golf world right now.
If 7,400 yards is a playground, will the next generation of golf architects abandon the arms race of distance entirely? Will they stop trying to acquire massive plots of land to build 8,000-yard monsters to contain these guys, and instead rely purely on the psychology of risk asymmetry? We might be looking at a future where par is protected almost entirely by visual illusions, baked-out turf, and impossibly conquered greens that force the best players in the world to second-guess every single mathematical calculation they make. It's something to keep in mind the next time you watch the pros tee it up.